Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Hello and good afternoon, and welcome back to the latest episode of the Musical Musings program. We air this program every Wednesday at 1 p.m., and it is broadcast to you from Rajamachan University of Technology, Peranakan. I will be bringing this program to you in two parts. In our first part, I will introduce a song and a performer or band to you, and we will discuss the main themes of the song, what the song is all about. Then we'll go ahead and listen to the song, and in the second part of our program, we will come back and we will analyze the lyrics. The lyrics are the words to the song. We will be looking especially at any vocabulary or slang or sayings that might be difficult to understand. So again, we'll do that in the second part of our program. After that, we will finish up and we will have the news and latest updates from the university as always.
Musical musings.
Welcome everyone. My name is Gary Gray and I am your host for the Musical Musings program. We broadcast this program from Rajamachan University of Technology, Peranakan, and I am an American teacher at that university. Of course, I'm mostly an English teacher. I do teach a little bit of science, but I'm mostly an English teacher. And I like to incorporate music into my lessons sometimes. And for that reason, that's why I'm bringing you a music program here. All right, so for today's episode, we are going to be looking at the song Thicker Than Water. It's sometimes called Love is Thicker Than Water. I believe the official name is just Thicker Than Water. And that song is by Audy Gibb. So before we start talking about the song, let's talk a little bit about Audy Gibb. All right, so that name might sound a little bit familiar to some of you. You hear the last name Gibb, and we're talking about music. For those of you that like any sort of Western music at all, one of the most popular Western bands here in Thailand is an old band called the Bee Gees. They have a couple of songs which are very popular here. I actually always forget the name of the most popular song here because it's very odd, because it is not very popular in America, which is very odd that different songs become popular in different parts of the world. So the name of their song that everyone likes here, I always forget what it's called. But the Bee Gees, other songs by them are still very popular in America. So they're a really old band. They're not even around anymore. Sadly, most of them have died. Barry is the only one that's still around. But they are popular here in Thailand. Most of you have probably heard at least one of their songs. Even if you don't recognize the name Bee Gees, you know at least one of their songs. But here's the part that you might find a little weird. Bee Gees stands for Brothers Gibb. Okay, we're doing Audy Gibb today. But in the Bee Gees, there are three brothers. None of them is none of them is Andy. So who is Audy Gibb? Who is this person that we're talking about here? Okay. Audy Gibb is also one of the Gibb brothers. There are four of them, or I should say there were four of them. As I said, Barry Gibb is the only one that's still alive, which is interesting because he was probably the most famous one. Maybe. Some might actually say Andy was, because Andy was a solo performer. So as I just said, he was a solo performer. He was not in the Bee Gees. It is not as though the other brothers didn't like him. Actually, the brothers get along pretty well. I believe there was at one point where they had an argument between them and they split up because of that or something. But then they made up. I mean, it was just basically brothers fight sometimes, you know. I have a brother. I don't think we ever fought to the point where we didn't talk for a while, but we'd fight sometimes. So he wasn't left out because they didn't like him. No. They just decided to form a band at a fairly young age. And Andy is the youngest one. So basically, he was just too young to join the band. That's all. That's why he's not in the Bee Gees. Simple as that. Could he have joined the Bee Gees later? Probably. They probably would have let him in. But they had already found fame on their own. And Andy seemed like he wanted to find his own fame. But actually, the brothers are the ones... The brothers actually helped him out. They kind of gave him some guidance when he was young. So yeah, it's not like he wasn't in the Bee Gees because they didn't want him in the Bee Gees. No, they loved their brother. He just was too young to join when the band formed. And so when he got old enough to perform, he decided to just do his own thing. And that's what he did. So he was born in 1958, so you can see that they're all fairly old. I mean, he's the youngest one, and that is, 66 years ago? And so Barry is, I don't know how old Barry is now, but he's got to be close to 80, because I think Barry might be the oldest one. I'm not sure of that. One of them looked, again, they've all passed except Barry. One of them looked quite old, but I don't think he was. So I could be wrong about that. We're not doing an episode on the Bee Gees here, so I didn't look up all of their information. But I think it's, but Barry is one of the older ones, at least. I'm pretty sure Maurice is the youngest one. Well, in the Bee Gees, obviously. Andy is the youngest one. But in the Bee Gees, I think Maurice was the youngest one. So, at any rate, I think it's a little bit ironic that Barry is the one that's still alive, because I think he's the oldest. He's at least the second oldest, if he's not the oldest. So, he's much older than Andy, since there's two or three, since there's at least one in between, maybe two in between there. So, he's quite a bit older than Andy. So, he's well into his 70s at least, but he might even be close to 80 by now. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how old he is. So at any rate, Andy was born in 1958. As I said, he has passed already. He died a long time ago, actually. He died in 1988, so he was only 30 years old. He died 5 days after his birthday. It's really a sad story because he had a lot of problems with drugs, so I believe it was a drug overdose that killed him. I think they said it was a heart thing, but it was probably caused by the drugs. When you're only 30 years old and you're taking lots of drugs and you die because your heart gave out, probably drugs. So it was the drugs that probably killed him. So that's a really sad thing. We've lost a lot of musicians that way through drugs or drug-related things, like Janis Joplin, really great singer. She died from a drug overdose. Jimi Hendrix, same thing. Unfortunately, with that lifestyle, you're traveling around the world a lot, partying a lot, and you're making a lot of money, so you have money to spend on things. Sometimes people get into bad things. And unfortunately, Andy Gibb did as well, and which is a shame because from everything that I've heard about him, obviously I don't know him personally, but from everything I've heard about him, he was a really nice guy. Yeah, so even good people sometimes can get caught up in some bad things. So sadly, that's what happened with Andy Gibb. So he died in 1988. Now, as far as his nationality, we mentioned this when we talked about the Bee Gees. It's a little weird. They're kind of thought of as being a British band, but they really formed in Australia. It's confusing because they were born in Britain, but when they were young, their parents moved to Australia. So they really grew up in Australia. That's where most of their musical stuff, like getting into music, forming bands, all of that sort of thing. That's where most of that happened. I will say for Andy, because he was younger, a lot of his early stuff was happening in England, because they did move back to England after that. So a lot of his stuff was happening in England. But then his brothers recommended that he go back to Australia because they had a lot of luck in Australia earlier. And so he did, and that's where he kind of got his success. So they're British, they're Australian, it's kind of a combination as far as what the Bee Gees are. And Andy is very much the same thing. I would say maybe you might associate Andy a little bit more with Britain, since being younger, he was back in Britain when he really started getting into his musical career. But even then, like I said, his brothers told him, hey, why don't you try going back to Australia? And he did. So they're really kind of British-Australian combination. All right, so he really started performing in 1971, so he was quite young. He really wanted to kind of follow in his brother's footsteps. That would have put him at about the age of 13. And obviously he wasn't going around touring at the age of 13. But he started performing, and he formed his first band in 1974. Now, the weird thing about saying that he formed his first band, I mean, he was in a band, and he was in another band in like 1976. I say it's a little weird because he's essentially a solo artist. So the band that he was with, I believe it was in 1976, really did a lot of his backup. It was his backup band for his solo performance. So that's really what it became. So usually when someone is a solo artist, we don't say they're in a band, even though, of course, they have musicians with them usually. They're not usually just upstage singing by themselves with no music. But we don't usually say that they're in a band if they're a solo artist. So it's a little weird talking about him with a band, because he's not really in a band. But, you know, people playing instruments, it's sort of a band. and when he started, I think it actually was more of a band formation. All right, so that was in 1974 when he formed his first band. Like I said, it was mostly a solo career, especially starting in 1977. That's when he came out with his first album. And on that first album, which was called Flowing Rivers, we get our song for today. So let's talk for a moment about the song. The name of the song is Thicker Than Water. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning, it's sometimes called Love Is Thicker Than Water, because that's kind of the line in the song. It says, love is thicker than water. So that's the line in the song. But I think technically the name of the song is just Thicker Than Water. So again, that was on his first album, which I mentioned came out in 1977. This was one of his biggest hits. He did have a couple others that were really big, but this one actually did get to number one in the U.S. And just, you know, I'm usually mentioning the U.S. charts. That's what that's called, chart, like where it gets rated. I usually mention the U.S. charts. It's not just because I'm American and so I'm biased that way. No, it has more people than any of the other Western countries. So for Western style music. So that's where people, performers, bands, artists, that's where they want to be popular. Because that's the number one audience you'll be able to find is in America. So I'm not being biased just because I'm American that I'm mentioning the U.S. chart. Now, the U.S. chart is the most important one just because it represents the most people. So getting to number one in the U.S. is a big deal. And this song did. Thicker Than Water got to number one. It's very interesting because we've seen this a lot on this program that I bring you. And that is that a band, group, performers, number one hit, their best hit, or at least maybe their second best hit, whatever it is. seems to almost always come on their first album, which is really surprising. You'd think they get better as time goes on. You get more experience, you practice more, you get better and better and better. But it's so hard to get success in the musical industry that I think that by the time you've gotten to this level where you're putting out an album through a record label, which is a really well-known one that's really going to promote your album, once you've gotten to that point, you probably already have a lot of that experience behind you. So you've already done a lot of that improving. And so the first songs you come out with might be the best ones you can come up with. And then after that, you're kind of forced to create more songs. You're going to have more music, more music, more music, more music. And so the quality might actually come down. So I think that's what's going on here, because we've seen this a lot. We've seen this probably with over half of the artists that we've discussed on this program. And we've been doing this program for over a year now. Probably for over half of the artists we've discussed, their number one song comes on their first album. And that's the case here. Now, I will say that some people may say that this isn't his number one song. He has another song called Shadow Dancing, which was also very popular. They might say that was his best song. But this is close. This is right up there because, like I said, this did hit number one in the U.S. So, Thicker Than Water, number one in the U.S. off of his first album in 1977. And so what's it about? It's a really simple song. It's just about love and the fear of losing love. As we go through the lyrics in the second part of the program, you'll hear that he's in love with someone that he's afraid does not share his feelings. In other words, she maybe doesn't love him as much as he loves her. So that's his fear, that he's going to lose her. So it's about love and being afraid of losing love. As far as the genre of this song, I didn't really talk about genre of music that Andy Gibb produces. It's kind of pop, soft rock style, and most of his music is pop, soft rock. And that actually is a little different from his brothers. I mean, his brothers were kind of in that same genre as well, quite a bit. But they also had more of a disco feel. They had a lot of songs that were more disco style. They also changed their genre a lot, or like from their early days, they really changed it and got more popular when they changed their style. But Andy Gibb is a little bit more pop, soft rock, that kind of area. And this song fits that. This is a very soft, easy song. Pop, soft rock, easy listening, that kind of genre. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the song. As always, those of you joining us on YouTube, you know how this works. We cannot embed the video, sorry. So please click on the link in the upper right to jump to the video for this song. And then once the song is done, you can jump right back here for our analysis of the lyrics. Everyone else should be able to listen just fine. And so let's get to the song.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
All right, welcome back. So that was Thicker Than Water by Andy Gibb, and it's a song about love and the fear of losing love. All right, so we talked quite a bit in the first half, giving you some background on Andy Gibb and his relation with the Bee Gees and all of that. So let's be a little bit quicker here for the second half of our program. And actually, it's a fairly short song. The video we played was actually kind of a long video. Or if you're just listening, you didn't see the video. It was a long version of the song, but that's because there was a long instrumental break in there. There's actually a very short version of the song that's only a little more than 2 minutes. So there's not a lot to go over here, but there are some words, some phrases, some ideas here that may be a little tricky. Even the name of the song, Love is Thicker Than Water. What does that mean? Okay, so let's start. Let's start right in here. So the song starts out, love is higher than a mountain. Love is thicker than water. What does that even mean? Higher than a mountain? Why is love high? And thicker than water? Why is it high and thick? Why are those words to describe love? What he's meaning here is he's talking about the strength of love. Higher than a mountain. Thicker than water. We have another saying that's blood is thicker than water. And that has to do with family. So when you're saying love is thicker than water, it means it's a strong bond. So it's higher than a mountain. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, and the bond is strong. So he's just talking about how important love is to him. That's what that means. It's a little bit weird, right? Higher than a mountain, thicker than water. You wouldn't even really think of water as being thick, right? Of all the different liquids you could have, oil is thicker. If you have yogurt's thicker. Anything's thicker than water. This is based on the saying that we have where blood is thicker than water. And it's about family and that bond between people. So that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about how important love is. So love is higher than a mountain. Love is thicker than water. You are this dreamer's only dream. Heaven's angel. Devil's daughter. Oh, okay. So you are this dreamer's only dream. Okay, sounds a little weird, right? That one's actually not too hard to understand. Just stop and think about it. Makes sense. He's a dreamer. Someone that's a dreamer means they're always thinking about these great things, these wonderful things that they hope they can do, hope they can achieve, but they may be kind of really hard to get to. So that's why it's like a dream. So he's always thinking about that. So he's a dreamer. But this is his only dream. This person, presumably a woman, because it says she later. So this woman, and it's a guy singing the song. Of course, that doesn't matter so much these days. You can have a girl and boy, but but it's a guy singing the song for a girl. So he's talking about a woman. So he's saying that being with that woman is the only dream he has. All right, and then it says, heaven's angel, devil's daughter. What does that mean? Heaven's angel, that would be like the best person, right? You're in heaven. It's the angel of heaven. And the devil's daughter, that's like the worst person. So this comes to this whole fear that he's going to leave her. That she's going to leave him, rather. Sorry. That she doesn't love him. I guess there's something bad about her that makes him be able to recognize that. It doesn't really talk about what's bad about her. But we have devil's daughter, so maybe she likes to play around. So maybe he's seen her with other guys or something. Who knows? We don't know. They don't talk about that in the song. But it's heaven's angel, devil's daughter. Okay. We continue on. Say my mind, should I go with her on silent nights? She'll drive me crazy in the end. And I should leave this paradise, but I can't leave her. Okay, so all of that should be pretty easy. Say my mind, should I go with her on silent nights? Okay, so it says say my mind. What does that mean when he says my mind? He's just talking to himself. He's just thinking, my mind, thinking about this. Should I go with her on silent nights? Okay, there's nothing special about that. Silent nights, think about sitting with your boyfriend or your girlfriend together, silent, just romantic, quiet night together. She'll drive me crazy in the end. Okay, so again, we're talking about she has these issues, whatever's going on. And I should leave this paradise. So he knows this is a bad situation he's in. But notice he calls it a paradise. A paradise is a perfect place. And he's saying I should leave this paradise. So you can see how he's torn apart here. He's split. He's saying he should leave because he knows this girl has a bad side. But he's still calling it a paradise. I should leave this paradise. And then he says, but I can't leave her. Okay. And then we continue on. While I need her more than she needs you, that's what I'm living for. Okay, so I need her more than, then it says she needs you. Should be she needs me, right? The English grammar there is a little bit messed up. They use the wrong pronoun. Whatever. A lot of these songs are not perfect English. So when I need her more than while I need her more than she needs you, that's what I'm living for. So he's basically, when you say you're living for something, that means that's all you're concerned about. That's all you're worried about. That's all you care about. So that's what I'm living for. That's a English saying, and it means that's your whole purpose. That's your whole point in life. So he's living for her. So that's why he says I can't leave her, because that's all he's there for. Okay, then we get to the chorus again. Love is higher than a mountain. Love is thicker than water. You are this dreamer's only dream. Heaven's angel, devil's daughter. Okay, when we continue on. Say my thought. Should I find out she don't care at all? She'll leave me crying in the end. Okay, so say my thought. This is like say my mind, where we had that earlier. Again, thinking about it. Should I find out she don't care at all? That should be she doesn't care at all. Again, we don't care about grammar in the music. So should I find out she don't care at all? She'll leave me crying in the end. So what he means by that when he says, should I find out, he means if I find out. The way we usually use the word should is different than that. It's advice, telling someone what is smart for them to do. That word here is not incorrect grammar. We can use the word this way. We don't usually use it this way, but there's nothing wrong with this. It's fine. He's using the word should to mean if. If I find out that she doesn't care at all, she'll leave me crying in the end. So, obviously, he'll be sad because he finds out she doesn't care. Okay, continuing on. Wandering through the afterglow, but I can't leave her. Okay, so wandering through the afterglow. What does that mean? All right, first of all, I see a lot of even native English speakers get this word wrong, and it drives me crazy. Wandering, W-A-N-D-E-R-I-N-G, is not the same as wondering, W-O-N-D-E-R-I-N-G. Wondering means you're thinking about something, and you're thinking about it like a question. Like, is it like that, or is it like that? That's wondering. This word in the song is wandering. To wander means to kind of walk around with not much purpose. Just a lot of times you would be enjoying yourself if you're just wandering around. Not always. You could be wandering through someplace because you're lost, which wouldn't be good. But usually we use it in a nice way. You're just relaxed. Like if you're wandering around through the mall. You like to shop. You're just kind of going around, looking around. Relaxing day. Maybe on the weekend. Out there with friends. You're just wandering around. So wandering through the afterglow. Afterglow is... This is a difficult one because of what it means for the song. This line does not really seem to make sense. Because remember, we had she'll leave me crying in the end. You should be sad. Afterglow is usually happiness. What an afterglow is, and we usually use that word in an adult way, but that's not what it means here. But that's usually how we use it, so it's kind of a funny word, afterglow. But what he means here, and what it means generally, not the way we usually use it, what it means generally is, it's really hard to describe, but it's that kind of happy feeling after something really good and exciting happens, but it's not the exciting part. For example, let's say your favorite football team wins the World Cup. Very excited. But okay, game's been over now for a few hours. Okay, you're calmed down. But you're still happy. You're still happy, your team won. It's great. All right, good. That's kind of the afterglow. After it's all over. Glow. We talk about someone having a glow about them when they look really happy and just satisfied. Happy and satisfied. And so that's what that means. That's the afterglow. The reason I say this doesn't make sense is she's left him crying in the end. He shouldn't be wandering through the afterglow. Now, when it says wandering through the afterglow is a feeling, right, that I just told you? How do you wander through that? I said wandering means walking around. It means wandering in his mind. In other words, he's just sitting there thinking about it. So he's just thinking about all the wonderful times. And maybe that's what maybe he actually does mean that. We see a lot in this song where they talk about a bad thing and a good thing. Heaven's angel, devil's daughter. So she leaves him crying in the end, and yet he's still wandering through the afterglow. Maybe he does mean it this way. It's not clear. As I've told you many times, artists usually don't explain their songs. They want you to interpret it however you think it should be interpreted. So I'm not sure what he means there. But generally, wandering through the afterglow, just generally, that would mean that you're just sitting there thinking about this wonderful situation, this wonderful thing that happened. Okay? So then we're almost done here. We continue on, but I can't leave her again. We had that before. Then, well, I need her more than she needs you. So we've seen that line before as well. And then it says, that's what I'm praying for. Okay? And that's it. We then just repeat the chorus twice. So that is it. Thicker Than Water by Andy Gibb. All right, so as I told you, this is probably Andy Gibb's #1 song, but it could be Shadow Dancing. He does have a few other really popular songs. I Just Want to Be Your Everything is probably right up there with these two. I don't particularly like that song as much, but it is quite popular. It's one of his most popular songs. Now, he doesn't have a ton of popular songs because he wasn't around that long. It wasn't that short. His first album was 1977. He died in 1988. That's more than 10 years. So his career wasn't that short. And he does have a lot of other good songs. I'm not saying he only had 3 decent songs. No, he has a lot of other good songs. But in terms of being able to come up with like 10 or 20 huge hits, usually a band needs to be around for 20, 30 years to do that. And so being around for only 10 years, yeah, he's only got a few. So he's not, I wouldn't say he's not as big as some of the other groups we've done or some of the other artists we've done. He was actually quite famous for a while, and I'm old enough so that I remember that time. I was quite young when he first became popular, so I don't really remember it that well. But I still remember when he was very popular. And he was right up there with some of the most popular artists in the world. Maybe not the very top tier, but second tier. He was quite popular. He was like second tier artist. And I just mentioned that because, like I said, I'm only mentioning 3 songs that he had that were really good. The one we just did, Thicker Than Water, Shadow Dancing, and I Just Want to Be Your Everything. That's it. Again, it's because his career was fairly short. He was only around for 11 years for his career. And like I said, he does have a lot of other good songs. So, as I always do, I recommend you to go check out his other songs, and I would first recommend those other 2 that I mentioned, Shadow Dancing and I Just Want to Be Your Everything. Check out those 2 songs by him, and I hope you will enjoy them. Between the 2, as I said, my favorite between those other 2 is Shadow Dancing. But I Just Want to Be Your Everything is really popular. Maybe you'll like it better. Okay, thank you for joining us for today's Musical Musings program. Please stay with us and make sure you tune back in next week for another great song. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Musical musings, musical musings,